Hello, I'm Conrad Bain. Tonight on Diff'rent Strokes, we're starting a special two-part show on a very sensitive and important subject. Now, we urge families, children, and parents alike to watch both of these informative episodes and then to discuss the problem presented, which is of deep concern to all of us.
All right, slow down there, Drummond. Guy's name was Conrad. On this episode, we're going to talk about very special episodes. While we highlight that weird era of sitcoms where they decided to throw away the scripts every once in a while and really teach us a lesson. A lot of kidnappings, Mike Seavers doing bumps in the bathroom at a party, Damone from Fast Times getting with Natalie from The Facts of Life. It's a hodgepodge of nonsense. It seems like they all did it. Silver Spoons, Good Times. And we're going to look at the early days of this from the 70s and those terrible Norman Lear shows. Man, we're going to hit some weird subject matter today, but they forced us to. They're the ones that brought it up. All right, let's just get to it. All right, Jason, you got the short straw this week. I appreciate you jumping on this one.
I don't know how I feel about it, but I'll let you know at the end of the ride how this whole thing went.
Oh, my gosh. So here's what's up. I told you what I wanted to do. I've been planning this one for a couple of months, and periodically I'll check out one of these very special episodes from the 1980s and late 70s, and it's wild. It's extra, not even extra. It gives more context if you're familiar with the show, rather than just seeing some kind of preachy 30-minute sermon.
Right.
You sit down expecting laughs from your zany sitcom, which is an absolute dying art form these days.
Yep.
I don't know that a young Gen Z might even truly know that they know of Friends from Netflix.
And they don't think it's funny, by the way.
I don't think it's funny.
Yeah. My daughter was like, what did you guys used to watch? And I said, well, this was our show that we gathered around and watched. And, I don't know. But yeah, she goes, I don't get it. And they don't get it. So I think the sitcom is kind of dead.
Yeah, I think the last truly great one was Seinfeld.
Probably so. Yeah, I think you're right.
Anyway, that's a generation ago, which seems crazy because can you name the Thursday night NBC lineup when you were a kid?
I can do Fridays.
What's Friday?
Wasn't Friday Love Boat, Fantasy Island, and then on another channel, you had the Dukes of Hazzard, followed by The Incredible Hulk. Was that correct? Is that right?
Dukes of Hazzard, Hulk, and then Dallas on CBS. You're right. But I know that because I dump out my Lincoln Logs in front of the fireplace and build a little town for my car to race through when the Dukes were on.
Yeah, exactly. And The Lonely Man. That's what the name of the song was at the end of the Incredible Hulk. And I just remember that poor sucker walking away with all of his crap and fit in a backpack. And I'm like, oh, that didn't work out again in this town. Time to move on to another one.
Poor Dr. David Banner. He saved a town from an arsonist, and nobody suspected it. And that nosy reporter was on his butt the whole time. And now he's just got to walk to another crummy logging town in Oregon and hopes that he could find that.
Yeah, he can reverse whatever. Yeah.
It's a startling metamorphosis. So we have that common glue. Thursday night, I meant a couple of years later, as we were older teens, with Cosby, Family Ties, Night Court, those guys. So it was absolute part of culture.
Yeah.
And so when you see Alex Keaton taking drugs or speed so he can stay up and study, we saw him being all zany the week before.
Yeah. Being all crazy Republican guy, the week before, and taking everything himself too seriously, and then all of a sudden to be just hyped up out of his mind studying for a test. Yeah.
So you thought you were watching Full House or any of the number of episodes back then that did this. What you got was a lecture and then this big emotional hug at the end. It was crazy. However, I looked it up. Those episodes, their ratings were through the roof.
They were. There's one that I'm going to bring up here in a little bit that had 21 million viewers on a show in its 9th season, which is incredible.
So let's talk about it first. What was a very special episode? It was just a sitcom that tackled a serious issue. Usually they had an announcer, so everybody gather around, get the kids, wake the neighbors. Like, this is
Yeah.
one that you need to watch. And the formula, it was a light kind of setup, and then this sudden tonal shift, and then this overly overbearing, preachy lesson, and this some kind of emotional wrap up.
That was exactly it. And it was funny because they would start, as soon as the episode the previous week had wrapped up, they would start pushing one of these episodes. And they would just say next week on a very special whatever.
Yeah. And then the announcer got real serious. Like, hey, what? Did somebody die? What's going on here?
Yeah, he would get all serious. And it's good. We're moving from the first ones I can think of was, and I think it might have been the first one you talked about. There had been heavy topics handled on sitcoms before with All in the Family and a Little House on the Prairie, which wasn't necessarily a sitcom, but some of these shows we were used to seeing heavy topics handled. I mean, Little House on the Prairie was absolute nightmare. I mean, there was just something horrible happening every week.
Forgot about that. There was the one where, what's his name? Albert got hooked on morphine.
Yeah.
And he sweating through his overalls. Like, okay.
Yeah. And everybody's, they handled, sexual assault, and they handled teen pregnancy on one. And they handled all these heavy things. And
it was like your favorite show got hijacked by an after-school special, but wearing its clothes. Like, it was similar.
You knew when you turn on Little House on the Prairie, as soon as they introduced a new character, like, well, this is bad. This guy's going to be blind or dead or something by the end of the show, because the core group always lived there, but any new characters or All in the Family, you knew, they had handled, somebody that was against the war, and they had handled, racism and some of those things. So you expected something heavy, but when you turned on Growing Pains, Diff'rent Strokes, The Facts of Life, any one of those shows, you were shenanigans. That's all you were looking for was shenanigans.
Well, I remember being a kid, and my first memory of this was a show actually from the 70s that I saw in the 80s.
Okay.
On my 12-inch black and white TV in my bedroom after school. This is probably 83 or something.
Okay.
Channel 25 in Oklahoma City used to do reruns of Good Times after school.
Yep, they sure did.
There was this voice that said, this parental guidance suggested for this show. What? Did they finally beat Bookman's ass in this one? What's going on?
I'm watching this. All I want to hear is JJ yell dynamite. That's all I'm looking for. Don't give me anything other than that.
Yeah. And I want James Evans to flare his nostrils and squeeze, make a fist. Like, yep. I'm there for the there, man. I'm not here to see what turned out to be JJ contracting VD and going to a VD clinic.
Oh, my word.
And among the poor saps sitting there waiting to see a doctor for their penicillin shot was a very young Jay Leno.
Oh, my word.
And I remember watching that. And only reason I thought about it is I saw Leno later on Letterman. Mm-hmm. Or back when Carson was still on the show, he was a guest. And I remember thinking, I know him. Oh, he's the guy that had VD, with the other guys from Cabrini Green in Chicago. So that's
those guys are it's just funny. Everybody started out looking for a paycheck. You wonder if they read the script and like, all right, you're VD guy next to JJ.
Yeah, you're
okay.
VD patient next to Jimmy JJ Kid Dynamite Walker. Yeah, I'm in. You're gonna pay me? Yeah.
Yep. Here's a crisp $25. So here you go. It worked out for Jay Leno. He made it.
Yeah, he did okay. He's driving nice cars, a bunch of them. All right, so let's lift the curtain on some of the luminaries from the era, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. Do you want to start with the big guns? Do you want to start with the episode?
We have to start with the episode because it's the first one I remember. So you tell me what you think it is, and I'll see if it's the same one.
Well, Mr. Drummond led in the show today.
Yep.
Diff'rent Strokes had an episode where Gary Coleman, got himself a deal at the bike shop. Now, you remembered it differently than I did. I watched it, his dad was going to buy him a bike. And it turns out the program manager from WKRP owned a bike shop after that show was canceled, I guess, in Manhattan. And he was going to throw in a handlebar radio if Arnold would pass out flyers at his school.
That's right. That's right. He had handlebar radio, and I forgot, Mr. Horton was the bike shop owner's name.
Yeah. Well, I saw him, and all I could see was him having no idea turkeys couldn't fly.
As God is my witness.
So that part was crazy because he was always just kind of lovable and goofy in everything I've ever seen him in, except the week where Diff'rent Strokes decided to have an episode where he entrapped a kid. You know what? Tell the story. You do it better than I do.
First off, it was the first one where I remember, like you said, that the Conrad Bain coming on, Mr. Drummond giving the announcement, and they ran a commercial encouraging parents to sit with their kids and watch this very special episode. So, like you said, Arnold is buying a bike. Well, the bike shop owner, tells him, well, I'll let you come ride it if you continue to hand out these flyers for me and give you this bike radio. And Arnold tells his buddy, right? You remember his buddy's name?
Yeah, Dudley.
Dudley, his friend Dudley. And Dudley wants in on it.
Diddley.
Dudley comes in, and he's, they're business partners. Dudley agrees to the deal. Arnold gets to ride the bike before his birthday, and Dudley gets a deal on a bike. And anyway, to celebrate their new business partnership, Mr. Horton breaks out some pizza and wine.
Yeah.
And the boys are like, well, I shouldn't drink, right? And
that's what all businessmen do.
That's exactly what he says. He's like, this is a business partnership. This is what you do in a business partnership. You celebrate with wine. And
what you didn't mention is this dude had a bike shop, and obviously in Manhattan, there, among the high rises.
Yep.
And behind the bike shop is his apartment, and they show the apartment, and it's got comic books and candy and video games and just
okay, a train and just all the things that because he's a good dude that lives in the neighborhood and just likes kids. That's why he owns the bike shop, right?
He's a good dude.
Yeah. So, he's harmless. So, the boys get some wine in him. He takes he tells the boys he wants to see their muscles. Do you remember that? Take their shirts off. They
take Tarzan pictures.
And, that they both leave pretty shortly after that. Well, of course, Willis and Kimberly smell alcohol on Arnold's breath.
Yeah, Kimberly.
Yeah.
Hey, you got
Kimberly.
You got any more that he give you pills?
I know, right? Poor Kimberly. So they promise not to tell, and Arnold goes back. Him and Dudley go back the next day, and it gets darker and darker. And I don't know if you noticed this, but as we watched this episode, they did not remove the laugh track. Laugh track was still plugged in if you go back and watch it, and you're just sitting there watching this, and you can pick it up where this thing's headed. And anyway, they go back the next day, and of course everything comes out again, and they're going to play. What was the game? You have to play it in the water. Oh, he pulls out the cartoons, sexually suggestive cartoons where people are not wearing their clothes, and he gets out some pictures and tells the boys you can have plenty of fun, skinny dipping and all
Jason,
this stuff.
Do you want the handlebar radio or not?
I don't know. Good grief, well, these boys are just, back then you trusted adults, I guess.
Yeah, I know. That's the part of the thing is just like, gads, man.
Yeah. So anyway, he ends up, Arnold leaves. He gets weirded out and leaves, and Dudley stays. Well, Arnold gets home, and while Arnold is there, I don't know if you remember, Dudley's dad shows up to chastise Mr. Drummond for giving Dudley wine. And Mr. Drummond's like, I didn't do that. And then Willis pipes up and says, well, Arnold came home from the bike shop with wine on his breath. So that gets everybody fired up, and they head straight to the bike shop with a detective. And anyway, they find Dudley has been given a pill, and he's out of it. And Mr. Horton's there, and the whole thing is blown up. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. And you you said when we talked about doing this episode yesterday, you said, yeah, they found Dudley all pilled up, which I don't think is a term I've ever heard before.
He was all out of it, and I guess he had fought off Mr. Horton. He said he had tried to touch him, and he fought him off. And you know what's crazy about this is my boys. I have a 10 and 11-year-old. Well, at the time, back around Christmas, they were 9 and 10, and they discovered the Diff'rent Strokes. And they think Arnold is the funniest person that's ever lived, which they would have been about my age back then too. And I just thought he was hilarious too. And whatever we have, DirecTV or whatever it is, not to shout out any sponsors if you'd like DirecTV. Anyway, they have all the seasons, and we got to season 5, and we got to this episode. Now, right before this episode, my 10-year-old had looked at me and said, did they always try to teach you something when you watch the show, or could you just sit here and watch it? On this episode, my 10-year-old is watching it. He's like, he's getting creeped out, which it's a 2-parter. At the beginning of the second episode, he's like, we should turn this off. I mean, he felt that it was wildly inappropriate to be on TV. And I was kind of with him. It was the most cringeworthy thing I have seen in a long time.
Have you ever watched a PG movie from the era?
Yeah. That you wouldn't watch with your parents now?
No.
I know.
It was just, not everybody was so touchy then. Pardon the term, given
Right.
what we're talking about. But, I mean.
Yeah. It was a PG movie from 1983 is vastly different from a PG movie now.
Oh,
you're right.
Yes. Hey, you want a good time? Find PG rated The Bad News Bears. That coach was chain smoking and all the kids were using racial slurs.
Yes.
He was mixing drinks in the dugout, chain smoking those heaters. PG. Back then, man, you could walk around Walmart and somebody sucking on a heater right there in the underwear aisle, throw it on the floor. Like,
I remember in the mall, ashtrays everywhere. It was expected. But it just cracked me up that he was like, why are you having to learn something when you're supposed to be sitting here doing something mindless? And I just kind of looked at it and I was like, why would they do this? Well, Gary Coleman, when he signed on, was 10. By the Bike Shop episode, he's 15 years old and still playing basically a 10-year-old.
Probably looking for a good time.
There's only so many what you talking about Willis's to get laughs that you can use, right?
Yeah.
So you got to go to this well, and they basically invented this very special episode to get all these parents and everybody together that, maybe it had started to wane or something.
I just remember they were saying they would talk to the directors and the producers and they would say, it was just really important to tell our audience, to teach these children these lessons. And meanwhile, these shows are through the roof. The advertising revenue they were making. And so the studio owners are there with their monocle and their mutton chop sideburns and their cigars with their spats on, counting money in burlap sacks. We're trying to teach lessons. It's
because if anything's true,
it did kind of veer into Mr. Peanut. I would say 1890s New York politician meets the
got him.
Meet the Monopoly guy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's funny because they did go through the roof when they first started. I read, Gary Coleman was making $1,500 an episode, and it shot up to, $70,000 in 1983, which is insane to think about for that little dude.
Yeah, but his parents were raking it in, man.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, because it was all gone. We all know that story. If you don't,
sue him.
Youngins, go look up the story of Gary Coleman. He's no longer with us, but and what's funny is they went to that well. Diff'rent Strokes went to that well so many times because it was working. Stuff would start to wane a little bit, you know, and their ratings would. And then they came in with the Kidnappers, which was another very special episode about not hitchhiking.
So we've got two tie-ins to the hometown here. Look, it's a national show, but the badge for the show has a very prominent old water tower in our hometown of Moore, Oklahoma.
Yep.
It's about growing up in the OKC suburbs, and there's a sad tie to Moore, but this is where Dana Plato decided to come to OD on drugs and pass away, is Moore, Oklahoma. And the annoying little kid on the show the last couple of years, because Arnold had truly grown out of the character, was Danny Cooksey from Moore, Oklahoma.
Yeah, and he was, Mr. Drummond ends up marrying Dixie Carter's character. I don't know her. I don't remember her name, but
nice get back then, man.
Right? Yeah, she's. I don't know if she's still with us or not, but I'm sure she's still pretty. But her son Sam was new Arnold, new cousin Oliver, new whatever young child you throw in to try to boost ratings. And new funny zinger one-liner guy, new what you talking about Willis guy, and he got kidnapped.
Good.
And in one of he was pretty annoying. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but they find him. If you're going to go back and watch, they do. He is recovered, but
I'm sure they brought him back after a couple of days.
They probably were. They probably brought him back and said, "Here's $20,000. Just go away." But yeah, it was. They went to that well a lot, and it worked apparently because people started aping them and mimicking the success of those shows for the rest of the 80s.
All right, everybody, that's the end of episode 1, but it's not like the old very special episodes. You don't have to wait a week. We're coming at you right again. Just hit play.
Wait, we're doing this again?
Shut up.